Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today, and welcome to our presentation on understanding Gen Z at work. I'm here to touch on an exciting and somewhat scary topic for many of you, and that's figuring out how to connect with Gen Z job seekers in this industry. Over the last decade or so, millennials have really dominated the conversation when it comes to the younger workforce, but as millennials age into management roles, and establish their careers, the next generation we're going to start focusing on incoming into the labor pool is Gen Z. And so let's dig right in. My name is Adam Robinson. I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Hirology. Today, we support nearly 10,000 businesses across all 50 states here in the U.S. With a deep focus on the hospitality business. Excuse me. And I'm excited to share with you today findings from our research and how that can affect you positively as you create strategy for attracting your best team. It has never been a harder time to fill open roles in hospitality, yet at the same time, your business success depends entirely on you finding a way to do so. 83% of you report that staffing shortages impacted you this year. That's according to our industry association. And today, about 100,000 excuse me, jobs in the hotel industry are currently open across the United States. That's where the Gen Z opportunity really lies. So the majority of new workers entering the workforce are young people, people who are graduating high school, trade schools, four-year colleges. And this generation is replacing the baby boomer generation who are exiting the workforce increasingly year after year. And so, in fact, in the next several years, this generation, Gen Z, is expected to make up more than a quarter of the workforce. So there's a real opportunity for employers looking to fill open roles with people who have their full career ahead of them and want to find a place to learn and grow. So who is Gen Z? Well, anyone born between, this may make you sick to your stomach, 1997 and 2012. So in other words, anyone who's around 26 years of age at the front end of this cohort and under. And so while it's easy to want to compare this generation to millennials, what I can tell you is they're wildly different from their attitudes towards work and what they're looking for. And so most millennials are in their mid 30s to early 40s at this point, and they're far along in their careers, much more adjusted to the processes and status quo set by their older counterparts. Millennials are also more likely to follow the status quo that's been set by folks in my generation, Generation X, and the baby boomers, because they remember a time before the internet and they were already experienced in the workforce well before the pandemic hit and really upended all the rules for what it meant to go to work. And so Gen Z, not so much. So to put some more context and color to this, the oldest members of Gen Z were born when AOL Instant Messenger launched. Anyone remembers AIM Instant Messenger? I certainly do. They were only one when Google was founded. They were 10 years old when the first iPhone was released, and they were 12 when Uber launched. So Uber was around for about 4 years before any of them even got a driver's license. And the gig economy in general, Uber included, was a very well-established and common opportunity for income by the time they graduated from college. Additionally, these individuals have never used this thing called a phone book. Most have never made phone calls to make a doctor's appointment or schedule a dinner reservation. They're doing this all online. They are a generation that truly has come of age knowing only mobile, digital, and a very highly digitally connected world. And so to them, anything and everything can and should be done online and digitally. And not only that, but also from a mobile device. And remember that these statistics are only just the oldest members of this generation. Younger members of this age group don't even remember a time before any of these massive technological advancements existed that largely define how we all live and work today. Another interesting trend among the Gen Z workforce is that they're much more interested in non-traditional or freelance gig work type of arrangements, which is largely due to social media offering these opportunities along with this generation's unique view on the world and in general questioning of the status quo. So they want to do things differently. and are driven to find their own paths to success. Now, part of the reason why this is the case is that they just have a different view on work and on life and that integration in general. So they don't necessarily see work and life as separate. It's really just life, but rather they see life as their professional and personal worlds mixed into one. And so freelance and gig work affords them the freedom to live that way. In fact, so half of Gen Z in the workforce has participated in freelance work on some level from 2020, and the number falls pretty significantly as you look at the older generations here on that slide. Now, in addition to being digitally native and having this entrepreneurial drive to work on their own terms, Gen Z is also defined by a number of other factors. One of the most significant being that the vast majority of these people have never held a job before the pandemic. The oldest of this generation graduated college around 2019. So some may have a few pre-March 2020 years under their belt, but most did not. And so for the things older generations take for granted about the way work used to be are not notions that this generation generally holds. And so to them, anything that we had to do to adjust to the pandemic in March of 2020, remote work, limited in-person connection, largely online sales processes. Now, certainly most of that occurred outside of this industry, which is very much an in-person business, is the norm. And of course, this bleeds into their expectations of potential employers. So some additional points to mention here, largely because they grew up in the era of social media, these individuals are disproportionately affected by stress and anxiety. And of course, this has ripple effects in your workplace. They are less loyal and change jobs more often than their older counterparts. They're more racially diverse. In fact, 1 in 4 Gen Zers is Hispanic compared to just 4% of boomers and 12% of Gen X. Thus, they rightfully so have far higher standards for diversity, equity, inclusion efforts from their employer. And they've been named the first real global generation, which means that they're the first generation that can access any information and connect with people from anywhere in the world in moments. And so this influences expectations for work as well, because they have a broader perspective and have access to so many different perspectives that they don't feel connected to the status quo set by their parents and their parents' parents. Okay, so we know these individuals are digital natives, they're entrepreneurial in nature, and they're very strongly interested in making work for them on their terms. So on the surface, this seems like a difficult generation to convince to come join your payroll. But the good news here is that there are things that we can do to adjust the way we approach our jobs, our hiring processes, to make your operation more attractive to this generation of people. So let's dig into that. So first and foremost, the first major expectation or general takeaway as it relates to the hospitality industry is the overarching fact that Gen Z does not generally view the hospitality industry and many other industries like trade work or skilled hourly roles or healthcare. They don't see these industries as desirable or as the answer to their needs, broadly speaking. And so let's dig into why, and most importantly, what you can do about that. First, I want to dig into some more data. We know Gen Z is different from older generations. We've established that. But in a recent Hireology study of job seekers, we found some interesting findings that continue to point to this. The first being that half of Gen Z job seekers say they would take a lower paying job in exchange for greater work flexibility. 41% of baby boomers said the same thing, while 45% of Gen X reported the same thing. Again, this points to what we were discussing earlier. This generation is largely forming their own paths because they did not live they didn't live the same childhoods we did, and even that millennials did to an extent. They don't really have any sort of attachment to a workplace status quo, a pre-pandemic view of things. So they don't see work and life and that integration in the same way those of us in prior generations did. Gen Z also values career growth, which makes sense. These individuals are young and just starting out in their careers, so they want to work somewhere that provides them with a future and opportunities to learn and grow so that they can expand their earning potential. They're not looking to make entry level salaries or hourly rates forever. And while they know that entry level pay is a reality when they're just starting out, what they want to know is that they're working towards something. What they're asking themselves is this job more than just a paycheck? Can I learn and grow and advance? Is there a career path for me? But the problem is that most Gen Zers don't see hospitality as an industry that offers them the flexibility and future that they're looking for, which I think, as most of us on this call know, is a huge misperception. One article published on hospitality.net referenced a focus group of Gen Zers, and most of them expressed the sentiment that hospitality jobs are rigid and inflexible. Two adjectives we do not want to use to describe job opportunities. And so I think, again, this is largely due to this generation's completely unique view on what work and work-life balance means. But I also think that part of this attitude is due to our education system. So younger generations are significantly less likely to pursue careers in the trades or the hospitality business because they've generally been conditioned to think that the path of a four-year college to that high-paying knowledge worker or white-collar office job is really the only way to get ahead. But of course, what we all know here is that the hospitality industry offers all kinds of pathways or really successful and well-paying careers. The problem, but also the opportunity, is that Gen Zers just don't see it that way. So it's incumbent on us to sell this industry differently. It's also easy to write off these demands or expectations when you're someone who's put in the work and the years in this industry. But it's important to remember that this generation is the future of the industry, not only the future of our workforce, but also the future of our serving our customer base, and also are our future customers. So we do need to take their expectations and worldview seriously into account. So I put this quote here from Mark Cuban, so you can hear this from someone else other than me. I mean, in a recent interview, Mark Cuban explained how he feels Generation Z is the greatest generation because they are at the forefront of all this change going on when it comes to work as we know it. And they're really forcing us as employers to make real and lasting changes that will impact generations to come for the better. So if you're not already thinking about how you look at career growth and flexibility in the workplace, however that works for your operation, it's going to be detrimental not only to your ability to hire Gen Z and retain Gen Z as they continue to make their mark on the workplace, but also in your ability to serve customers, because this age group is going to become your customer base. They're going to look at your business holistically and not only for work, but also give their business to hospitality businesses that meet them where they are in terms of expectations. So what can you do to shift the perception around younger job seekers relative to this industry opportunity? Well, you of course can't change an entire generation's mindset, but you can take a page out of a playbook that younger folks are certainly familiar with, and that's consumer marketing. So think about, how would you market your property to guests? How do you do that? Well, the first thing you do is you develop key messages around why your property is unique and what experience you offer guests that other hotels or resorts might not offer. You're developing great branding materials that stand out. You might run ads on a TV or a streaming service. Maybe you're running print ads. You almost certainly have a social media presence, and you build a great website that really sells your property. The right message on the right channel to the right audience is how you build your business today on the consumer side. You do that as a hotel, you do that as really any business. Now, the same concept needs to be leveraged for your jobs and your hotel as an employer. You've got to craft messaging that resonates with your target audience. So for Gen Z, that's going to be messaging around what you can offer them long-term career-wise and how you can make their work-life balance work for them. And so we've got to really sell what they get out of working for you across all of your owned channels, your job ads on career sites, your own career site, and your social media profiles. Really everything has got to be selling the opportunity, the career path to these individuals, speaking to them directly. So let's look at a few examples that I think really stand out in the context of what we know about Gen Z. This example here we're looking at uses a great headline at the top of, importantly, a dedicated careers page that cuts right to the concept of work-life balance and flexibility. So they're selling their hotel not only as a great place to work because they support their employees at work and when they're not at work, but they also offer them a chance to make an impact and live their lives fully outside of their day-to-day job. So it's really a message about supporting them as individuals, both in and outside of work, which is the message that really resonates today. Another example here, this one is taking more of a career growth emphasis, which I think works great as well. So this particular employer is showcasing how they aren't offering just a job to earn some extra cash for a few months, but rather a long-term career option with hundreds of opportunities for them to explore and grow into. So as an example, still I think one of the greatest examples about how to sell a tough job. I always think about Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So this company is known for almost exclusively hiring recent college grads. In fact, Enterprise Rent-A-Car has for 35 years has been the single largest employer of college graduates in the United States. But the folks they're hiring aren't taking corporate jobs at first. I mean, this position is literally you're parking and washing cars and helping customers fill out forms, typically at the airport or in the basement of high-rise buildings in urban areas. And so, it's not glamorous, but they of course don't sell it that way. They're out there these folks in these roles at Enterprise are out there working directly with customers, for the first year or two on the job. But that's really what gets them on the path to something greater. Because if you take a minute and go to Enterprise's career site, what you'll see is they make a pitch that's essentially, if you want to be successful and you aren't quite sure how to get yourself on that path, let me take a few minutes to explain to you how working for Enterprise can help you do that, right? They aren't just offering the entry-level position and saying you're going to be parking and washing cars at the airport. What they're doing is they're selling a long-term opportunity. Many hotels can and do offer similar trajectories, but the problem is that most people don't see it that way, or it's not being sold that way. So you really need to make it known in your employer branding, on your career site, in your career advertising, and wherever you're trying to meet candidates, and in your relationships with local universities. So, one quick homework assignment sometime at the conclusion of this webinar, go to your own career site and just audit the messaging. Are we just talking about the kinds of jobs that we have open today, or are we selling an opportunity to build a career? The difference makes all the difference when it comes to your recruiting success. Well, moving on to the next expectation we're seeing from Gen Z, and that's the use of mobile in the hiring process. So let's look at some data. When we asked job seekers in our most recent survey if they've ever given up on an application because it took too long to complete on their phones, 55% of them said yes. Now, while this generation was most likely to say yes to this answer, the rest of respondents across all generations answered this question relatively similarly. But I think if you had asked Gen Xers and Boomers this question a few years ago, it might not have been the case. So I think what we're seeing is Gen Z is really driving this change and making this shift toward a mobile-only job seeker experience, and it's by and large becoming the norm for all generations. And so when it comes to mobile, everyone values it these days, but Gen Z certainly has the highest expectations. Similarly, about 90% of Gen Z respondents said they'd be open to texting with your recruiting team if it meant the hiring process would move faster. Again, I think this speaks to Gen Z's digitally native upbringing. So they expect you to be able to do everything on their phones because they know it will be easier and faster, and it's what they're doing everywhere else in their life. And if you think about it, why should the job search be any different from any other communication process that they're engaged in everywhere else in their life. They really have the upper hand here because you're the ones who need them. I mean, we are short 100,000 open jobs here in the industry right now. We need them. And so it's incumbent on us to meet them where they are around how they're communicating. So let's take a look at mobile from a job application standpoint. Remember, this group of individuals is accustomed to getting anything they want online nearly instantaneously. Most have never used anything other than a mobile device for communication. They generally don't own printers or scanners. They don't remember a time before scheduling appointments was online. And so for many, even ordering meals online is something that they've always known. There's no more junk drawer full of menus in the apartment or house that I certainly had growing up. And so if you can't offer the same experience, they're going to see you as out of touch. It's going to be an indictment on your management team and process. And they're just not going to see you as an organization that they want to be involved with to the extent they would if you were meeting them where they are. So what I want to do, your homework assignment number 2, is after reviewing and auditing the messaging on your career site, I want you to take a few minutes, get out your phone, and try to apply to one of your own jobs on your phone and ask yourself a few questions. Was this job easy to apply to? Can I easily fill out the fields? Were there a few that were really important, or are you asking potential employees to rewrite their resume with their thumbs on a mobile device? Is it asking for a PDF upload of a resume, which is something that is really hard to do on a phone? How many drop-down menus are you asking them to navigate? And I think most importantly, are you requiring them to create a username and login before they can even apply to a job? So I want to take a look at the comparison on the 2 screens here. The one on the left has large fields, and the entire application can be seen on one screen without having to scroll. The one on the right requires a ton of scrolling to get through it. It has lots of small fields that are really difficult to complete, and the drop-downs take up the whole screen, making navigation really, really tough. It's also asking for a bunch of information like previous work history and education history. That's really difficult to enter on the go. I mean, do you know your former supervisor's name and phone number off the top of your head? Things like that. And even if the fields aren't all required, remember, you're in competition with lots of other employers here. And even if the fields aren't all required, it's just daunting to look at. And folks will just drop the process and move on to the next hotel that makes it easier for them. So be interesting to get your feedback. Anyone, feel free to send me a note after you've done your audit and just tell me what you find. There will definitely be some opportunities for improvement. Another way to keep the process moving faster and engage with more Gen Z candidates is by texting them throughout the process. On average, across all generations, text message open rates are more than 4 times as high as email open rates. And we know that Gen Z is digitally native and mobile. Most of them don't remember a time before mobile devices. And so this is really a normal and expected way of communication for them. You may think texting is rude or intrusive if you're a member of Gen X or a baby boomer, but that's just not the case for this group. So on top of that, email inboxes are just out of control these days with all the marketing messaging that's going out. And so, take a look at your own personal inbox. I like to run an exercise when I'm in front of management teams, and I ask the question, we'll give a Visa gift card out for whoever has the highest number of unread personal emails. And, I think, the highest number I'd seen was approaching 250,000, right? So I bet the number of unread emails in most folks' email account on this call is in the triple digits, if not more. While your text messages that aren't read are probably 0 or near 0. And so don't let your messages to schedule interviews or move great candidates along in the process get lost in inboxes in your email. Send texts, right? The message here is it is high time for this industry to move its recruiting process, communication channel from email to text messaging. They'll get read faster, they'll get responded to with higher frequency. You're going to get a far greater return on your recruiting investment, because this is how this market wants to be communicated with. Another interesting finding from our research is that Gen Z job seekers really expect transparency more so than previous generations. And so let's go back to Hireology's recent applicant survey results. The chart on the left-hand side, you'll see that Gen Z respondents were less likely than all other generations to say that they'll apply to a job if the salary isn't listed in the job description. And if you remove millennials from the equation, the gap between Gen Z and the rest of the pack becomes even larger. Then on the right, you'll see a question we asked in our survey. Respondents who have admitted to ghosting or just no-showing an interview. Gen Z respondents were much more likely to say that they bailed on an interview because of a lack of communication and transparency from the employer, or because the job turned out to be something completely different than what was advertised. So all this comes down to transparency. Are you advertising what you're actually offering? Or are you trying to reel people in with a vague job description only for the pay, and the job is just something a lot less enticing than you're making it seem, right? So you got to have some truth in advertising, and you've got to be really transparent about pay rates. That's something that's really, as more and more municipalities pass wage transparency laws where you have to actually post the pay rate on the job description, that expectation trickles over into areas where that might not be the law, but it is what's going to get you more applicants for that job who are much more interested in working for you. So let's take a look at some job description examples that highlight transparency. So you'll see a couple of examples of pay transparency here, but this concept even goes beyond pay. So some of these older examples give good transparency into the types of shifts that might be required, holidays, or general flexibility around when they may have to work. It's important to be upfront and honest about these expectations if you're going to look to hire younger workers who really have little patience for vague and ambiguous language when it comes to these kinds of details. And so I think in this case, you'd rather get fewer candidates who are actually interested in the job than hundreds who are going to bail when they fill in the blanks and realize what the role actually entails. And the hiring process is another area where it's important to add transparency. So if you're failing to respond to applicants in a timely manner and not clearly setting up with the hiring and onboarding process effectively, you're going to get some no-shows and ghosting happening. The key is to communicate frequently. People want to know what's happening, what the next steps are, where they are in the process, and they want to know that they're still in the running and what to expect. So in order to do that, you have to stay in touch with them much more often than you might think. In fact, according to our study, respondents on average want to hear from you daily up until the point when they're onboarded into your company. Now, this is tough, though. Your team is already strapped for time, and this kind of work is very, very manual if you don't have the right systems in place. And it can take up so much time you could be using to do other arguably more important things that actually do require human touch, like more in-depth interviews or conversations. And so that's why many hotels we're seeing in the space are embracing AI and automation. And just conceptually, the way to think about it is if I, as a hiring manager or an HR professional in this industry, if I can take a minute of time out of manual follow-through and automate that, either leveraging AI tooling or some form of automation, I'm winning, right? We are going through this process of taking manual work out of this recruiting process and automating that so that we can spend more time doing the higher value work. That's really, when you hear about AI and its impact on hiring, it's really about automating the communication back and forth and moving process along faster. So next, we found that Gen Zers are far and away more likely to job hop and look for work elsewhere that meets their needs, but at the same time, they don't burn bridges. So there are opportunities to win them over and get them to come back. So we asked survey respondents to share how long they expect to stay at their next job if they're currently looking for work. And Gen Zers were significantly less likely to say they're going to stick around long term, which is interesting given that they're much younger and earlier on in their career. So you think they may be more inclined to say they're going to stay a little longer. If you add up the last three bars, really only 24% of Generation Z expects to stay longer than 4 years, while 46% of older generations say they're going to be there for longer than 4 years. But of course, this should not and cannot deter you from looking to hire Generation Z. Their numbers are only growing. And as more and more of this group graduates into the workforce, you really have to be mindful of their attitudes toward work. And so my take on this is, they're expecting to learn, they're evaluating their career opportunities in 2-year chunks. They're going to learn what they can learn over 18 to 24 months, and then they're going to make another decision. Does this employer give me what I need for another 2 years of growth, or am I going to need to look elsewhere in order to get ahead? You want them to grow with you, to drive retention up. All the benefits of lower turnover will accrue to you if every 2 years you're giving them opportunities to learn and grow. So let's look at what that means. What do we need to exchange from our end as employers in order to get loyalty in return? Well, according to survey results, it's all about the same things we discussed earlier. It's about flexibility and it's about career growth. So if you can prove to them that you can help them develop their skills and grow their earning potential, they will stay longer, but you really have to show them that. You can't just talk about it. It actually has to be true. That means you have to have actual training and development opportunities in place. It means we have to promote internal mobility by looking to invest in training the younger workers and hire internally for promotions as much as we can. You want to help this generation get in the door. These are our front desk clerks and room attendants, and commit to helping them grow and move up into more senior positions. I recently met with a hotelier who said that at her property, she uses mentorship programs and internal marketing efforts to highlight people who have started out in those entry-level, perhaps less exciting positions, but have worked their way up into different departments and into leadership roles over time. So it helps create a sense of, okay, this is the goal, this is what I'm working toward, and people can see themselves in that journey and their path. That will keep your most motivated and high potential people loyal and working for you over the long run. And the same goes for flexibility, by the way. So like it or not, this generation is changing the way we look at work. And of course, in hospitality, there isn't always an option really ever to offer remote work. But I've met with many operators who are offering perks like 4 10-hour days. Recently it made news that Ritz-Carlton system-wide went to 4 10-hour days. I mean, talk about a major change. And in talking with their people leader, what they've found has been in exchange for a little bit more management overhead, the workforce is reporting they really like the 4 10-hour day program. And I know many of you will ask questions, is that all roles in all hotels? The answer is yes, that's everyone. Everyone has the option to move to a 4-10 schedule across a very large system. And so the ability for workers to pick their own schedules and work hours that make more sense for them is really what drives this loyalty. And remote work days for members of the workforce that can work some days remotely is something that can and should be offered. And so that's really the pathway to success in building loyalty. Even though Gen Zers do tend to be less loyal, I mentioned before, they don't burn bridges. And what I mean by this is that they're more open than previous generations to returning to organizations they've worked for in the past. So say they left for a new opportunity elsewhere to gain some new skills or gain more responsibilities. Perhaps they thought the grass was greener. And in that role, they grew and experienced something else, but they remember what they liked about working for you, and now they want to come back. This is absolutely something you can and should be focusing on. Good people are going to leave your organization. It's going to happen to explore different opportunities, but the best thing you can do is support them in that move and keep that relationship warm for future positions down the line. And one of the best ways to facilitate what we call boomerang hires is through this concept of talent relationship management, which is where you work to foster long-term relationships with talent at varying levels of association to you over time. So that could mean former employees, like I've mentioned, but also former job applicants. Maybe your silver medalists or runners up who you didn't hire. Former candidates, college students, even existing employees. So think about this concept as a contrast to traditional recruitment where everything is very linear. We have an open job, we leverage recruiting channels to source candidates for that specific job. We're essentially starting from scratch every time. We pick one, we move on. This involves familiar channels like job boards, career sites, or even career fairs. However, when you transition toward a more relationship-based recruitment strategy, it becomes critical not only to attract new talent, but also to nurture all of the individuals you've previously spent all that time and money getting into your talent database. So, what that means is housing all these individuals in a centralized, accessible repository. It means staying in touch with each group proactively. So not just when you have roles open, which might mean sharing updates about your organization, new properties in the portfolio, other organization news, stories of folks who've grown their career, who've moved up. And then when you do have critical roles open, the first place you can go is to reach into these warm relationships digitally and invite them to apply. It makes the hiring process faster. It helps you make better hiring decisions because you already know many of these individuals. You spent time vetting them in the past. And what I like is like your cost to source talent goes way, way down because you're leveraging talent you already know. And so this is a concept that I believe in the future years is going to be critical and really effective with this generation. They don't have this attachment to traditional ways of recruitment, and we know they're less likely to burn a bridge if they leave. So if you meet folks at career fairs, at college events, or if you hire someone right out of college, they leave a year or 2 years later, keep them in your system, nurture them over time. And I bet down the line, you're going to see folks who end up coming back. They make great additions to the team after they've learned how it works elsewhere and they've picked up those additional skills. And that's what I've got for you today. And we'll be taking questions here momentarily. So to summarize, by the end of last year, Gen Z made up 27%. By the end of 2025, Gen Z is predicted to make up 27% of the workforce. Gen Z workers have substantially different life and work experiences. And recruiting and hiring them successfully requires you to redesign your jobs and make sure you're delivering on the promises you make. If you're promising flexibility and fulfilling work, you better be delivering it. And this is what's going to keep turnover low and will fuel your referral program. So happy employees refer their friends. Connect with Gen Z on their own terms. Meet them on the channels and the devices that they prefer. What that means is optimize for mobile and move away from email and towards text messaging as your platform of choice. Got to make it fast and make it easy. And you got to adhere to what they expect and what they're used to. And if you don't, someone else will. Third, be transparent. Again, if you're not being open and honest, they'll move on to someone else who is. And so, you don't waste your time with vague offerings because what'll happen, that's where your ghosted interviews or ghosted first days start to happen. And then finally, consider your relationships with these individuals as a long-term timeline. Even if you don't hire them for the role they've immediately applied for, keep in touch. Or if they leave your organization, again, keep in touch, keep them warm, build this database of previous talent relationships that you can keep close by, you can nurture it, you can keep it warm so that when you've got that next open role, you've got folks ready to come in and talk to you. And so with that, I wanted to leave a few minutes for any questions you might have. So talk to Katie or Diana who are helping me moderate this event. Turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. It looks like we don't have any questions as of yet. But thank you so much for such a great and informative webinar today.
You're welcome, Katie. Thanks. Thanks to everyone here who's attended. Copies of this presentation are available to everyone who's registered. And of course, if you want to talk with Hierology more about how our technology helps you implement some of the concepts we talked about here today, please do reach out and we'd be glad to spend some time with you. So on behalf of the team here at Hierology, I want to say thank you very much for your time, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.